I'm Lauren, 31, and for most of my life, I thought I had my future locked in place. My family owns a successful chain of artisan bakeries in California, and from the time I was old enough to tie an apron, I was being groomed to eventually take over. My dad, Peter, built the business with my mom back in the 80s, and while he wasn't the most affectionate father, he always talked like he trusted me to continue the legacy. I'd gone to school for business and food science, and after college, I spent almost a decade working every role in the company. Dishwasher, cashier, baker, inventory manager, before I was finally offered a director-level position 3 years ago. We had 12 bakery locations then, and I helped expand us to 17. Profits doubled. Our name was starting to pop up in national press. I thought my dad and I were finally on the same page. The first sign that something was off came last December when I was diagnosed with a uterine fibroid tumor. It wasn't cancerous, but it was large enough that it caused chronic pain and needed to be surgically removed. Recovery would take 6 to 8 weeks, and I'd need to be completely offline for at least the first month. I told my dad, and he didn't seem overly concerned, more annoyed than anything. "You're not the only one in this business, Lauren," he said when I explained the situation. "We'll get someone to keep the ship afloat." I assumed he meant temporarily. I even offered to help coordinate remotely once I was lucid, but he brushed me off. "We'll manage. Just focus on your health." He appointed my cousin Vanessa, yes, Vanessa, to act as interim director during my absence. Let me paint a quick picture of Vanessa. She's the daughter of my dad's sister, and growing up, we were more frenemies than family. She was always trying to compete with me, grades, sports, social status, but never really had the discipline. She worked in our bakery briefly in her 20s but quit after 6 months because she didn't like waking up before 9. Since then, she's bounced around from job to job, but she's charming, photogenic, and knows how to talk her way into opportunities she doesn't deserve. I thought it was absurd that he picked her, but I told myself it was temporary. What could she even screw up in a few weeks? The surgery went well. Recovery, not so much. I had complications, ended up back in the hospital with an infection, and lost another few weeks of time. By the time I was coherent and well enough to even think about work again, it had been nearly 2 months. When I finally called the main office to check in, the first red flag was that I was met with confusion. Lauren," said Dana, the executive assistant. I thought, "Didn't Peter say you were stepping back?" "Stepping back?" I asked. "I was recovering from surgery." There was a long pause. "You should probably talk to him." I did. I called my dad that evening, and he was oddly cold. Not even a "glad you're feeling better," just straight to business. "Lauren, the board voted while you were out. We've decided to restructure." I could feel the blood draining from my face. "What does that mean?" "It means Vanessa will be staying on as managing director," he said. "We're giving the brand a refresh. She's done a phenomenal job while you were away. Sales are up, social engagement has tripled, and we're attracting a younger demo. It's the right direction for the company." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You mean she's keeping my job?" "It was never just yours," he said sharply. "You were doing well, but the business needs evolution." I wish I could say I stayed calm, but I didn't. I screamed at him, accused him of betrayal, of using my illness as a convenient excuse to oust me. He didn't even deny it, just said, "Sometimes you have to make hard calls." Click. I was shaking. For the next few days, I called around, hoping someone, anyone, in the company would back me. Most of the senior staff gave me vague responses or avoided my calls. A few expressed sympathy, but clearly, they'd all been looped in and made their peace with the change. Then came the real punch in the gut. Vanessa started posting TikToks and Instagram reels in the bakeries, talking about her vision for the company. She rebranded the packaging, changed the company motto, started a personal blog called Baking It Better with Vanessa. In interviews, she referred to the business as a family legacy I've always felt deeply connected to. She didn't mention me once. I lost it. I showed up at the flagship bakery in Santa Barbara, the one I helped design from the ground up, and tried to talk to the staff. Most were cordial, but clearly uncomfortable. Some avoided eye contact. Then Vanessa showed up. She walked in like she owned the place, wearing heels and a designer blazer, with her hair in perfect waves. "Lauren," she said faux sweet. "You really shouldn't be here. This isn't your office anymore. We had it out in the back room." She was smirking the entire time. "You snoozed, you lost," she said. "Don't blame me because you decided to take a little health sabbatical and leave the company directionless." I stepped up. "You stepped on me," I snapped. She didn't deny it. And it worked. I filed a formal complaint with the board, citing medical leave protection and internal manipulation. They replied with a vague letter saying the company was within its rights to restructure leadership in my absence. I consulted a lawyer who basically told me unless I had a contract, which I didn't have much of a case. I was beyond devastated, not just because of the job, but because of the betrayal. My own father handed everything to someone he used to openly call unreliable. But the weirdest part? Something didn't feel right about the numbers she was bragging about. Vanessa claimed our engagement tripled and that sales were booming. But I had access to some of our old internal dashboards, ones they apparently forgot to lock me out of. And when I looked into the raw data, the numbers were inflated. Some bakery locations were reporting increased revenue, but others were flat or even declining. The social media growth? Mostly bots. I ran the follower lists through a couple tools and found a huge percentage of fake accounts. It looked impressive on the surface, but it was all smoke and mirrors. So now I had a new mission. I was going to expose her. I started quietly collecting data. Screenshots. Archived analytics. Discrepancies in order reporting. I reached out to a few old allies, one of the original bakers, a supply manager I trusted, and a social media freelancer I'd hired years ago who still had back-end access. Turns out, there was more than just inflated numbers. There were ghost orders, sales entered into the post that didn't correspond to any actual product movement. A few locations were reporting inventory shrink that didn't line up with foot traffic. And worst of all, several vendors hadn't been paid in over a month, even though the budget showed the invoices is cleared. Vanessa wasn't just incompetent. She was possibly embezzling. And I wasn't going to let it slide. When I got out of the hospital the second time, I was still weak, dizzy, and emotionally gutted from what had happened with the business. But there was one person I thought I could still lean on: Nathan. We'd been together for 3 years. He wasn't perfect, but he had been there for me through stressful work nights, expansion launches, and family tension. Nathan worked in architecture, did a lot of freelance design projects. He was calm, analytical, emotionally even-keeled, the opposite of my family. When we first started dating, I remember thinking he felt like a safe harbor. He was the one who'd driven me to my surgery, sat with me in pre-op, waited through the hours in the hospital lobby. When I woke up groggy and nauseated, he was there with a blanket from home and my favorite peppermint gum. He helped me get home afterward and set up my bed in the downstairs guest room so I wouldn't have to climb stairs. For the first week, he was around a lot. Brought me soup. Made sure I took my antibiotics. Kept my phone charged. I was in and out of sleep most of the time, but every time I cracked my eyes open, he was there. But around the 10-day mark, he started getting busy. A friend needed help moving. Then he had a client deadline. Then a family dinner. Then another project. At first, I chalked it up to life. He was a freelancer. When work came, he had to take it. I understood. I told him not to worry. I'll be back to normal soon, I said one night when he popped in just to drop off groceries and kiss me on the forehead. You don't have to carry this all on your own. He looked at me strangely for a second. Almost like he didn't know what to say. Then he smiled. We're fine. Just rest. I wish I'd paid more attention to that moment. The second hospital stay was when things really shifted. I'd picked up a low-grade infection at the surgical site, and they kept me in for observation for 5 more days. I texted Nathan when I was admitted. He didn't answer until late that night. Just a short, glad they caught it early. Let me know if you need anything. No call. No visit. I asked him if he could come by. I'm in Orange County right now. I'll come after the weekend, he said. That weekend passed. Then another few days. No Nathan. When I finally got out, I was exhausted. My mom was in New York visiting her sister, and my dad, well, by then, I didn't even want to talk to him. I got a ride home from a friend. Nathan didn't even ask if I needed a lift. He didn't come to see me until 5 days later. Walked in with Thai takeout and an awkward, overly cheerful tone. How are you feeling? He asked, like we hadn't been dating for years. Like he wasn't the person who used to know every freckle on my shoulder. I was too tired to pick a fight, so I let it slide. We ate. Talked about nothing. Watched a movie we barely paid attention to. He left early, saying he had early site visits. Then he didn't come over again for 2 weeks. When I tried to talk to him about it, when I finally had the strength, he deflected. I'm just trying to give you space, he said. I didn't want to overwhelm you. You were in recovery, and I thought maybe it was easier to let you focus. I asked him, easier for who? He didn't answer. Something was off. Deeply off. But I was too emotionally tapped out from what had just happened with the bakery to deal with a relationship crisis. I told myself he was just under pressure. Maybe he was freaked out by the surgery. Maybe he was the kind of guy who wasn't good with medical stuff. I rationalized it because the alternative that he was pulling away was too painful to accept just then. And then, 3 weeks after I was finally back on my feet, we broke up. I didn't even see it coming. He came over, sat on the edge of my couch, didn't even take off his coat. I think we need to take some time apart, he said, avoiding eye contact. I asked, are you seeing someone else? No, he said immediately. Too immediately. I didn't believe him. But I didn't argue. I was too numb. I just nodded. He left. That was it. For a while, I spiraled. I thought maybe I'd pushed him away. Maybe the stress had made me difficult. I combed through old texts and voicemails, wondering if I'd missed something. But 2 weeks later, I got my answer. It came from a girl named Jessie who used to work part-time at our Brentwood location. She'd stayed in touch with me, off and on, and had always been a little bit of a gossip. She messaged me on Instagram. Hey, I didn't want to stir the pot, but are you okay with Nathan and Vanessa being together now? My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? I wrote back. She sent a screenshot. It was from Vanessa's close friend's Instagram story, a blurry boomerang of her and Nathan clinking wine glasses over a charcuterie board, with a little heart emoji drawn on top. I stared at it for minutes. My stomach twisted. I thought maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe it was old. Maybe she was just trolling me. But it wasn't. Over the next 48 hours, I found more proof. A video from someone's birthday dinner where they arrived together. A comment Nathan had left under one of her selfies. A tag he forgot to remove from a hiking photo. All small things, but when stacked together, it was obvious. They were together. And no one said a word. Not my dad. Not my aunt. Not any of the cousins I grew up with. No one told me. It was like they were pretending it wasn't a betrayal. Like I didn't exist. I tried to talk to Nathan. Texted him. Called him. He didn't answer. So I went to his place. He didn't open the door. But I saw a new jacket I didn't recognize hanging on his coat rack through the window. Vanessa's. I recognized it from her stories. The next day, I confronted my dad. Did you know about Nathan and Vanessa? I asked. He looked at me for a second and then shrugged. It's not really my business, Lauren. Not your business? I repeated. He was my boyfriend. He gave a dismissive sigh. You and Nathan were rocky before the surgery. Maybe it wasn't as solid as you thought. I was speechless. Later that week, I found out the whole family knew. They weren't even hiding it anymore. Vanessa brought Nathan to a family barbecue in Malibu. My cousin Seth sent me a photo from the event, not to support me, but by accident. It was a group shot. Nathan was standing next to Vanessa, his hand on her back like he belonged there. I couldn't breathe when I saw it. Worse, Vanessa had the nerve to message me. She sent a single text. I didn't plan for it to happen. We just connected. Hope you're healing. I blocked her. But the hits kept coming. I found out later that she'd started showing up at Nathan's work events, schmoozing his clients, making herself part of his world. She posted photos from a wine-tasting weekend in Sonoma, the same place Nathan and I had planned to go last year before I got sick. I felt erased. Everyone, my family, my ex, even some of our mutual friends, acted like it was some natural evolution. No one acknowledged how disgusting it was. How deeply wrong. It was like I'd been swapped out for a newer model. The only person who seemed remotely disgusted was my childhood friend Kara, who worked in PR and had always disliked Vanessa. She's always wanted what you had, Kara said. The business, the spotlight, your dad's attention, your boyfriend. You were down, so she pounced. I didn't want to believe it. I still clung to the idea that Nathan wouldn't do that to me unless something else was going on. But then I found out something else. An acquaintance who worked in accounting for one of our bakery vendors reached out to me, asking about Nathan. She'd seen his name pop up on a new consulting agreement through the bakery's design department, a department we hadn't had until Vanessa took over. He'd been contracted by the company, my company, to overhaul store aesthetics and layout flow. And he was being paid for it. So not only were they dating, he was now financially benefiting from the business I helped build. It wasn't just a relationship betrayal. It was financial. Professional. Personal. They didn't just replace me in the office. They replaced me in every single way. And the worst part? No one flinched. No one defended me. No one said, this isn't okay. I'd been erased. Like I'd never mattered. Like I was never even there. I left Los Angeles on a Thursday morning with everything I owned packed into a rented Suburban. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. No note. No final confrontation. No dramatic exit. I just locked the door of my rented townhouse in Silver Lake, turned in the keys, and drove north. I didn't have a plan exactly. Just a feeling that if I stayed one more day in that city, surrounded by the betrayal, the silence, the unbearable familiarity, I'd implode. I drove for 8 hours, stopped in a small town near Napa for the night, and by the time I crossed into Marin County the next day, I decided I'd settle in San Francisco. It wasn't too far, but far enough. It had the energy of a city, but the anonymity I needed. And it was expensive, which, ironically, made me feel safe. I didn't want anything that resembled comfort or nostalgia. I wanted sharp edges, ambition, clean breaks. I rented a tiny one-bedroom in Pacific Heights. It was overpriced, barely furnished, and sat at the top of a hill so steep I felt like I was scaling a cliff every time I walked home. But it had big windows and quiet neighbors, and more importantly, it was mine. I cut off all contact with my family. I blocked every number. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. The only person who knew I'd left was Kara, the friend who'd stood by me after everything with Vanessa and Nathan. And for the first time in my life, I started over. I had savings, not a fortune, but enough to last me a few months. I toyed with the idea of going back to food, maybe starting a blog or a pop-up kitchen. But the thought of anything even remotely close to baking made my stomach turn. I needed something completely new. I started bartending 3 nights a week at a hotel lounge near Union Square. It was boring work, but it paid well, and the people who came in were mostly wealthy travelers, tech founders, or investment types who liked to flash money and talk too much. I listened, took notes, learned names. It was there in that overpriced cocktail lounge that I met Celeste DuPont. Celeste was a regular, tall, commanding, with platinum hair and a voice like gravel. She came in twice a week, always ordered the same thing, dirty martini, blue cheese olives, and always tipped in cash. One night, while I was finishing her drink, I mentioned that I recognized her from a real estate magazine. You're Celeste DuPont, right? The woman who flipped the Pacific Heights mansion in 4 months. She smiled at me over the rim of her glass. You read Realty Ledger? I read everything, I said. She cocked her head. What's your story? That question turned into a 30-minute conversation. I didn't tell her everything, just that I'd left behind a family business and was trying to figure out what came next. I didn't mention Vanessa, or Nathan, or the betrayal. But I guess she saw something in me. Come by my office tomorrow, she said, scribbling her number on a cocktail napkin. You're too smart to be behind a bar. I showed up at her real estate firm the next morning. I had no license, no experience, just the clothes I wore to job interviews and a burning desire to never be powerless again. Celeste hired me as an assistant, unpaid at first, but with commissions on any leads I brought in. I studied like my life depended on it. Passed my real estate exam in 2 months. Shadowed every open house, every closing, every client negotiation. Celeste was brutal, but she taught me everything. People don't buy houses, she used to say. They buy power, security, ego. Learn to speak that language and you'll own this city. My first sale was a $4.2 million condo in Russian Hill to a venture capitalist who liked that I didn't flinch when he asked invasive questions about my background. I told him the truth, that I'd walked away from everything I knew and was building something better. He called it bold. Signed the papers the next day. From there, it snowballed. San Francisco's luxury market is cutthroat, but also deeply incestuous. Once you break into the right circles, the VCs, the crypto millionaires, the old money tech families, word spreads fast. I branded myself as someone who didn't come from their world but could navigate it better than most. I didn't smile too much. I didn't flatter them. I made them feel like I was the only one in the room who'd tell them the truth. I wore tailored black suits, low heels, no jewelry besides a single gold ring. I changed my hair. Shorter, cleaner. I went by Lo instead of Lauren. Clients started requesting me specifically. By the end of my first year, I closed over $38 million in sales and got my broker's license. Celeste called me her secret weapon. But I wasn't just selling homes. I was building alliances. There was Elliot Cho, founder of a fintech company that had just IPO'd, who asked me to find him a discreet penthouse downtown for late nights away from the wife. I found it in 3 days and never asked questions. There was Miranda Hallberg, a biotech CEO with a crumbling marriage and a secret girlfriend in London. I got her a house in Sausalito with a gated driveway and zero paparazzi access. She referred 4 other clients. Then there was Luca Parisi. Luca was Italian-American, tall, sharp-dressed, and made his money in high-end construction. He had a fleet of subcontractors, permits in every major city on the West Coast, and a reputation for getting things done fast, sometimes too fast. He came to me for a private sale in Napa. Said he needed something out of the way. I found him a vineyard estate that had never hit the market. He paid in full cash, through a Delaware holding company. After the closing, he asked me to dinner. I declined. He respected it. But we started working together, quietly. I'd bring him off-market listings. He'd flip them with his crew. We split profits. By my second year, I had enough capital to start investing on my own. Bought a duplex in No Valley, then a triplex in Potrero Hill. I hired a tax attorney, an accountant, and a private security firm. I changed my number, deleted old social media, even got a P.O. box and another zip code. My past life felt like a different person's memory. Then, one night, at a gallery opening in Hayes Valley, I saw a woman who looked exactly like Vanessa. Same wavy hair, same posture, same smirk. I froze. Couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. But when she turned, it wasn't her. Just some art student with a similar look. Still, it rattled me. That night, I realized I hadn't spoken my sister's name out loud in over a year. I hadn't thought about Nathan in months. I hadn't spoken to my father since the day he said, "It's not really my business." And I didn't miss them. I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. I was the top broker at Celeste's firm by year 3. I was offered a partnership. I turned it down and opened my own boutique agency in Pacific Heights. Low Parker Properties. Sleek branding. No nonsense. We specialized in discretion and off-market deals. Our tagline, you already know what you want. We get it for you faster. I hired 2 assistants, Amanda and Ray, both sharp, both fiercely loyal. I handpicked every listing we took on. I screened every client personally. I wasn't chasing success. I was controlling it. There were still hard days. Days when I woke up with phantom anger. When I dreamed of family dinners where no one looked me in the eye. Days I imagined confronting Vanessa in some dramatic showdown, demanding answers she'd never give. But mostly I just moved forward. One day I was closing a deal for a new tech campus in Palo Alto when I got a call from a blocked number. I don't know why I answered. It was my father. His voice was slower, older. "I heard you're doing well," he said. I didn't reply. There was silence. Then, "Your aunt passed. Thought you should know." Still, I said nothing. "She always asked about you," he added. I hung up. I haven't spoken to anyone from my family since. I've built my life from scratch. Brick by brick. Contact by contact. Deal by deal. And no one can take it from me now. Not Vanessa. Not Nathan. Not my father. Not anyone. The envelope was off-white and thick. Heavy. Embossed gold lettering. The kind of expensive custom stationery you only see in vanity weddings or royal funerals. I almost missed it, buried in a stack of forwarded business mail from my old Pacific Heights office. But when I saw the sender, Vanessa Calloway Nathan Rhodes, my breath caught. Wedding invitation. I stared at it for several seconds. My assistant Amanda had just brought in my tea and noticed my face. "You okay?" she asked. I held up the card like it was radioactive. Just a reminder that some trash knows how to afford gold foil. I opened it slowly. Elegant. Curated nonsense. "You are cordially invited to the celebration of the union of Vanessa and Nathan." The date was 6 weeks away. The venue? A private estate in Carmel by the Sea. Weekend-long event. 3 days of champagne-soaked narcissism, ending with a black tie wedding that made me want to wash my hands just reading the itinerary. I put the invitation down and stared out my window for a long time. I cut them off. I'd vanished from their radar. For 3 years, not a word. And yet, here it was. Why? Some twisted olive branch? Power move? Pity? I almost threw it in the trash. But instead, I made a call. Not to a friend. Not to family. To Reagan Sharp, a woman I'd met a year ago at a high-end real estate mixer in Tiburon. She was sharp, cynical, and made a living producing an underground podcast called Third Circle, an investigative show that specialized in scandalous stories among San Francisco's elite. Reagan had once told me, "Everyone talks eventually. I just keep the mic rolling." I hadn't seen her in months, but when I called, she picked up on the second ring. "I might have something for you," I said. "Who's the target?" "An influencer," I replied. "Family adjacent. Corrupt. Cruel. Plastic in a cashmere wrapper." "I love it already," Reagan said. So I told her everything. About Vanessa. About Nathan. About the family betrayal. And then I told her I had a plan. "I want to make it look like she did it to herself," I said. Reagan whistled. "You're speaking my language." The key was subtlety. No fireworks. No screaming matches. Just the right people in the right place at the right time. The first step was to build a reason for Vanessa to speak freely, with people she thought were friends. I spent the next 2 weeks putting together an elite weekend in Napa under the name of a fake luxury event company I created overnight, Hollowglass Collective. I had the website built in 48 hours. Bought 12,000 followers for the Instagram. Had Amanda and Ray handle press kits and RSVP confirmations. I called it a private lifestyle founders-only retreat. Invitation only. Curated brunches, tasting menus, and influencer networking. We booked a real estate staging mansion in Yountville. Everything looked flawless. Linen canopy tents, floral installations, custom menus. The kind of aesthetic hell Vanessa couldn't resist. Through fake profiles and a few real industry acquaintances who didn't know the full backstory, we baited her into attending. She RSVP'd within 36 hours. Nathan was listed as guest. I hired actors. That sounds dramatic, but I had to. 2 women, Mara and Lydia, both mid-30s, both with influencer looks and SAG cards. I briefed them fully. They were to play founders of a natural wellness startup that had just closed a $12 million seed round. They'd be positioned as investors, too. They were armed with hidden microphones, body language training, and a script. Their job wasn't to interrogate, just to listen. The goal? Get Vanessa talking, bragging, scheming. I knew her ego. I knew if she was around people she thought mattered, she'd show off. The real trick was ensuring no one knew who I was. So I stayed completely out of sight during the event, monitoring everything from a side room with Reagan and her audio team. The brunch was held under a eucalyptus canopy with imported chairs and hand-lettered name cards. Reagan's mics were everywhere, under tables in flower arrangements, sewn into napkin holders. Vanessa showed up wearing a blush pink Zimmermann dress and a smile like she'd already won. Nathan was behind her in a beige linen suit, trying way too hard to look like he hadn't aged into a dad bod. Mara and Lydia flanked Vanessa during the main course. "I've always admired how you positioned your personal brand," Lydia said casually. "So clean. Curated. Controlled." Vanessa grinned, proud. "Well, after I took over the bakery stuff, things just exploded. Lauren wasn't ready to scale it. She was too cautious." "Is that when you came in?" Mara asked. "Oh yeah. And like, I love her, obviously," Vanessa said, sipping her mimosa, but she was totally spiraling. Hospitalized, paranoid, had no strategy. Nathan and I kind of had to step up. Nathan chuckled. "I mean, it was messy. But honestly, we stabilized everything. And then I rebranded it completely. People still think it was Lauren's, which is cute. But she never built the engine. That was one piece. But not enough." Later, after a few more cocktails, Mara baited her again. "So what's your strategy now? Like, long-term?" Vanessa leaned in, whispering like she was doing them a favor. "I've got a podcast deal coming up. And we're launching a DTC line. But the best part," she smiled, "I still use some of Lauren's old vendor relationships. I just renamed the contracts. Kept a few ghost entities alive so the IRS doesn't flag us for the crossovers. We're legit, but only because I'm clever." There it was. Fraud. Nathan muttered something about not putting that in writing, and Vanessa laughed. "Oh please. Nobody checks. If you say it with a smile and a spreadsheet, men believe anything." Reagan looked over at me, eyebrows raised. "We got it." 3 days later, Third Circle dropped a surprise episode titled, Bake, Lie, Repeat. The teaser was subtle. Just a soft intro. What happens when family loyalty, ambition, and a wedding invitation collide? Then came the audio. Clear. Sharp. Vanessa's voice, unmistakable. Her laughing. Her bragging. Her incriminating herself. Within hours, the episode exploded. Reagan knew how to seed it in the right channels. Media execs, influencer watchdog accounts, former vendor forums. Reddit picked it up. So did Twitter. An ex-employee from the bakery confirmed the voice. Then the press came. Vanessa Calloway, bakery heiress, caught on tape discussing contract fraud and family exploitation. Podcast leak reveals ugly truth behind Instagram entrepreneur. She tried to deny it. Claimed it was edited. Claimed it was AI. But Reagan had receipts. Timestamps. Backups. Witnesses. The internet turned on her like a wounded animal. Her followers plummeted. The DTC Lines pre-orders were pulled. The podcast network dropped her. Nathan tried to make a statement, something generic about privacy, misrepresentation, and healing as a family. But someone leaked photos of him at a silent investor dinner with one of the vendors Vanessa mentioned. Suddenly, the bakery's current books were under audit. The wedding? Postponed, indefinitely. I didn't celebrate. Not publicly. I didn't need to. I just forwarded the podcast link to my father with no message. No subject. Just the truth in audio. He never replied. And I was fine with that. Because revenge wasn't about destroying Vanessa. It was about reclaiming my silence. And making it loud. The moment the podcast episode dropped, I knew Vanessa's days were numbered. But I didn't expect the unraveling to be so fast or so satisfying. It started with the sponsors. By the third day after Third Circle aired the recording of Vanessa bragging about her fake contracts and stealing vendor deals under ghost LLCs, her two biggest brand sponsors, Oak Bloom Skincare and Wild Rise Organic Foods, dropped her. Publicly. I didn't even have to dig for it. It was all over their social media. Oak Bloom is no longer affiliated with Vanessa Calloway. We stand for transparency, honesty, and accountability. That same night, Wild Rise posted a short video from their CEO, Zara Mandel, who I knew from a real estate deal last year. I watched the clip from my office, coffee in hand. In light of recent revelations involving fraudulent activity, we are cutting all ties with Vanessa Calloway. We believe in ethical leadership and protecting our partners, not exploiting them. She looked furious, and knowing Zara, she probably was. That woman didn't just sponsor influencers, she invested in them. She backed Vanessa's DDC product line. Gone. Vanessa posted a rambling, overlit Instagram story the next morning, sitting in a bathrobe, crying with no tears. "You guys don't understand," she said. "I was joking. It was out of context. People are jealous. I'm being crucified for being successful." Classic narcissist meltdown. But the sponsors weren't the only ones watching. Her entire social circle began to peel away like cheap veneer. She got uninvited from a dinner hosted by the Holt sisters, socialites with a generational wine empire in Napa. She was disinvited from the launch of the new Biarritz Hotel in Carmel, where she was supposed to host a wellness brunch. Even her PR rep, Gabriela Espinoza, the woman who once called Vanessa unbreakable branding gold, issued a public statement that they'd amicably parted ways. Then came Nathan's family. I found out what happened through a mutual acquaintance, Danny, someone I'd met years ago at a charity auction and kept in sporadic contact with. She messaged me out of the blue. "Lauren, have you heard? Nathan's parents cut her off. His mother refused to let Vanessa in the house for brunch last weekend. Called her a social liability." I almost choked on my tea. The Rhodes family had old East Coast money. Conservative, calculated, and obsessed with appearances. They didn't mind influence chasing, but they loathed scandal. When the podcast went viral, Vanessa went from aspirational to embarrassment overnight. From what Danny told me, Nathan's mother, Catherine Rhodes, had been trying to pull him away from Vanessa for months. The podcast gave her the final bullet. She showed it to the entire family at Sunday dinner. Nathan was apparently stunned silent. He'd known about the vendor restructuring. He'd helped Vanessa create some of the redesign packages. But he didn't know about the ghost contracts. Or the tax dodging. Or that Vanessa had bragged about manipulating their families and walking over me to get ahead. She said on the tape, "I didn't even have to lie. I just stepped in when Lauren stepped out. She made it too easy." According to Danny, Nathan left the Rhodes house that night and drove straight to Vanessa's condo in Venice. Neighbors heard them screaming for 2 hours. Some kind of glass broke. He moved out the next day. And 2 days after that, the engagement was officially called off. She didn't post about it. But the ring, a 3.2-carat vintage cut diamond that she'd shown off in no fewer than 47 Instagram posts, disappeared from her hand. Fast. Then came the business fallout. Vendors started demanding audits. The internal accountant, a woman named Layla who had stayed under the radar, resigned and leaked a resignation letter to the press. In it, she stated she could no longer be complicit in a culture of financial misrepresentation and self-dealing. The bakery's reputation tanked. Sales plummeted by over 40% in 3 weeks. A Reddit thread in r/baking business analyzed their actual inventory orders and pointed out that the ingredients used in their new vegan banana oat scones didn't even match what they'd advertised. A former employee commented that Vanessa had forced the team to rebrand a failed pumpkin loaf by giving it a new name and lying about the ingredients. The word grifter came up a lot. Within a month, Vanessa quietly stepped down from the business. There was no press release. No video. She just stopped posting. No more brunch shots. No more CEO mornings. No more sunrise yoga on the bakery roof. She vanished. And the bakery, the one my family had built, the one she hijacked, was taken over by an emergency management firm hired by my father's old CFO, who'd come out of retirement just to salvage what's left. I didn't gloat. I didn't comment publicly. But I paid attention. While Vanessa's world crumbled, mine was ascending. I had just finalized a deal to take over Archer plus Vale, one of the most prestigious real estate firms on the West Coast. The founder, Maxwell Archer, had decided to retire and hand-select his successor. I'd closed 3 record-breaking sales for him the year prior. When we sat down for coffee in Sausalito, he looked me in the eye and said, "You're not the loudest. You're not the flashiest. But you're the sharpest knife in the drawer." The ink dried on the paperwork 2 days after Vanessa lost her last sponsor. I became the CEO of Archer Plus Vail on a Thursday morning. I wore a gray wool suit, no jewelry, hair slicked back, and shook hands with partners from LA, Seattle, and Scottsdale. I stood in front of my new team, 30 agents, 5 regional directors, and told them we were going to double revenue in 18 months. And I meant it. That night, I went home, opened a bottle of wine, and sat on my balcony watching the lights of San Francisco flicker in the distance. I had made it. No shortcuts. No inherited title. No fake alliances. Just strategy, patience, and survival. 3 weeks later, a package arrived. It was small. No return label. Just a hand-addressed envelope taped to the top. I opened it carefully. Inside, folded in tissue paper, was my old kitchen apron. White. Slightly worn. Stitched with my name in red thread on the corner, Lauren. I hadn't seen it in over 4 years. Tucked beneath it was a short note on thin notepaper, and signed. "I think this always belonged to you. Sorry it took so long to get back where it should." There was no name. No hint. Just that. Simple. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I missed the baking, but because it was the last thing they took from me. And now I was back. Not as a symbol of who I had been, but as a reminder that even when they thought they'd erased me, I never disappeared.